So now we're on to 8. A lot of people's first Dragon Quest game, because 8 was actually when Square had merged with Enix and became Square Enix and made a really big push to try and get Dragon Quest more popular over here. And as a result, people that were gaming around the PS2 era and into RPGs were exposed to it. It also came with a demo of Final Fantasy XII as a way to promote it. So it's a lot of people's first Dragon Quest game and a lot of people's favorite because of a mixture of nostalgia, and it actually is a really good game. I have 2 copies actually. This is the one that I used to play, and then I also have a sealed copy. So it's really good. The story's really good. There's some really emotional parts, just like in 5. It's definitely the more advanced. I would say even more than 9, which is a DS game, which caused a lot of controversy when they went from PS2 to DS. There's definitely a huge graphical downgrade. So it's probably the most advanced graphically and everything of all of them at this point. They just came out with a port for 8 for the 3DS. So if you don't have a PS2, you can do that. So yeah, if you're watching this video, by the way, because you're curious about 8, because you saw that it came out on the 3DS, it's a really good game. And I've seen on the 3DS port, they've actually added more characters that were already in this game, but can now join your party, whereas they couldn't before, and they changed some other things too. Rebalance some of the enemies that were kind of BS before. So yeah, I would say go right ahead with that if you haven't played 8. If you're into if you like turn-based RPGs, if you are into a good story, a really big game, I would say a lot more non-linear than most JRPGs, which tend to be more on the linear side. Really cool post-game content, lots of cool weapons and accessories that you can equip on your characters. Amazing art style, as usual, by Akira Toriyama. Yeah, it's a really good game. And I've got 9, which is, like I said before, on the DS. The cool thing about 9 that sets it apart from the other Dragon Quest games is you can see each piece of armor on all your characters in your party. So like not just the weapon and the shield or whatever, but also their hats, their boots, their gloves. So if you're into like seeing the different pieces of gear and how your character grows and evolves, that's definitely something. You actually customize your own avatar. In this one, you pick male or female, their hairstyle, their eyes. And then if you manage to find somebody else in real life that is willing to also play with you, you can play co-op through the entire game, and then for hundreds and hundreds of hours after, running dungeons, changing your classes, keep getting more gear. There's so much gear and so much, like, this game could go on for thousands of hours in theory if you had someone to play with you co-op. It's almost like the Diablo of the Dragon Quest games. So if that sounds appealing for you, 9. It's also got a pretty good story too. 10 is an MMO that hasn't come out over here, so I don't have 10. And 11 is in development right now for the PS4 and the Switch. So don't have those obviously, but I do have Dragon Quest Monsters Joker, which is kind of like the Pokemon of Dragon Quest. There's some sequels to it as well, but I don't have those. I only have... Oh, just kidding, I'm dumb. I have the second one. I completely forgot that I still had that. So I've been selling off a lot of stuff to try and pay off our Nintendo Switches. So, but yeah, I do have both of them, and it's like a more mature. Not to knock Pokemon, because I love Pokemon. It's like a more mature version, and features all the awesome creatures. I recommend playing this like after you've played some Dragon Quest games, because then, you know, as you're playing through and capturing the monsters, you're like, oh, I know this guy, and you know, I recognize these creatures, which makes it a little more fun for me personally. I'm not really super well versed on Dragon Quest monsters, so I'm not the right person to talk about the ins and outs and the technicalities of it. And the last thing I want to show you is this, which is the Dragon Quest Encyclopedia of Monsters. That, once again, like, if you're gonna get really into Dragon Quest, a lot of the cool stuff you have to import from Japan, because it's not coming out here. Like I said, super huge over there, and not so much over here at all. So this I imported from Japan, bought it online. It's amazing. I love to like look at art books in the store and online and stuff, but you know, you look through it a couple times, you're like, okay, that's really cool. But this one, I mean, you can really pour over this, and even though obviously I don't speak Japanese, I can get the gist of what they're showing here. They've got each creature in Dragon Quest, and they're showing all the different games that they're in, and their different sprites and graphics in all the different games that they appear in. They're like stats. They've got like these little stat wheels, and it's so cool just to look at Akira Toriyama's awesome creature designs and look at how the look of the creature has changed over the years. Yeah, I could just stare at this thing for hours. It's really awesome. So I don't have a whole lot of like extra stuff that's not games, but when I saw this, I was like, yeah, I gotta have that. And then it's even got like all the bosses. Here we go. Here's like the bosses. So, alright, I'm sorry. I realized when I was showing off the Encyclopedia of Monsters that I wasn't holding it up good enough. So you guys can really see what I'm talking about. With the way that the monsters have changed over the years, what they have for all of them, the stat wheels, yeah, really awesome. I can't even really call it an art book because there's so much to it. I mean, it gets, and then you've got like the bosses in the back that have their own little section here just for them. Yeah, it's really awesome. Dragon Quest Encyclopedia of Monsters. And then I wanted to talk about, because I've gotten pretty off topic here, just showing off my Dragon Quest stuff and getting excited about Dragon Quest, nerding out and all that. Dragon Quest Heroes. If that's what you're here originally for and you've stuck through all the videos. I appreciate that very much. Sorry for being long-winded, but now hopefully you know some more about Dragon Quest. Dragon Quest Heroes is part of the Heroes Warriors series, so obviously much different gameplay than these other games. But I will say that it has a lot more RPG to it than the other ones. Even Hyrule Warriors, which they started to add more and more RPG stuff in my opinion. There's a lot of different gear, side quests, ways you can customize your character, skills that you can earn through leveling up, and stuff like that. So if you're not really into those slash 10,000 dudes at once games, this might be the one that you check out if you're more into RPGs. And if you think the series, those types of games have gotten more stale, maybe this is the one that revitalizes it for you, because it is it has more to it, I would say, than most of the other Heroes slash Warriors games. But I would recommend playing as much Dragon Quest as you can before getting into Dragon Quest Heroes, simply because you'll recognize the characters, where they come from. You'll be like, oh, there's Bianca, you know, my waifu. And it has music selections from all the games and remixes and stuff that if, you know, you're a little bit nostalgic for them, when they kick on, you're like, oh yeah, this is awesome. So yeah, I would recommend playing the Dragon Quest games as much as you can before the Heroes games. And if you're only into the Heroes games slash Warriors games, and you're not really that into turn-based RPGs, then just play those, and then maybe you'll be like, wow, I really want to know more about these characters and these worlds that they come from. So, oh, by the way, when I say worlds, Dragon Quest games are like Final Fantasy, disjointed, kind of standalone stories. The first three are connected in a way, but not really. And yeah, so you can play them in any order you want. It doesn't really matter. Although I personally would recommend playing the first one first, just to see where it all started, before you had party members. And you know, Dragon Quest, the original, was the one that inspired Final Fantasy, the original one. So it's, you know, it's one of the granddaddies of RPGs. So it's a cool little check to add to your gamer card that you've played it. But anyway, I hope you guys have learned some more about Dragon Quest from these videos, and I'm looking forward to 1 and 2 on the Switch, even though I've already played the first one on the PS4. And yeah.